Alright guys, I'm getting ready to head out the door and I've got a video coming about something that I had heard about today. But as I start talking about homeschooling more, I'm going to be helping parents homeschool their kids. So I kind of wanted to do this years ago to have like a consulting business. Maybe I'll do that. But we are seeing things where parents are losing their kids left and right. So I just uploaded on my community channel. Jordan Peterson talked to some parents about how the social services got involved because this daughter wanted to be a boy. Poor little girl couldn't have her way, so the parents were, looked upon as bad parents because they did not affirm her gender transition. There's a difference between empathy and there's a difference between, affirming that yes, you are a girl when in fact, you're a boy, or yes, you are a boy when in fact you're a girl. We know that's not true, right? It's just not the truth. So this is a social experiment for a lot of people. A lot of kids need help. They have gender dysphoria. Something happened, some kind of trauma. So we want to, what we're seeing now is just the schools taking over without the gender dysphoria and saying, if you want to be a boy, you can, or you can be a girl. So we want to counter this. As Christians too, we want to counter the culture. A lot of times we just want to be different. We want to be a light because this is evil. It's really evil to take kids and not allow them to grow up and to be innocent and enjoy their childhood. That's what we should be wanting for our kids. Whether it's men in the women's bathroom or men's competing in women's sports, this is wrong. I saw a short the other day, and this guy was dressed up in a woman's tank top and making fun of how he could now, as a man, fight women. He could actually punch them now, and how wonderful it was that society allows him to punch women. So we're seeing a need for people to go back to family values. We're seeing a lot of stuff happening, and homeschooling, I believe, is a huge key to raising your children to build your own values with your family. So for me, I'm going to be talking about, yesterday I talked about your why. Why would you want to homeschool? For me, I wanted the time with my kids. I wanted to raise them with my values, not the schools. The time they were teenagers, we were seeing prom, with the boys being prom queens, but that's not why I homeschooled. The main reason why I homeschooled is I just loved being a mother, and I just loved being with my kids, and I wanted to teach them. And when I grew up, I was around my family a lot, and I was probably around my family had more influence than the school did. And I think parents have more influence than anyone else in a kid's life. It's your parents. So, despite some things that had happened with a forced abortion and all this stuff, I did get to enjoy being around family a lot. I had times in Deerfield with snowmobiling, horseback riding, just a good country life, gardening, seeing my grandmother garden. We used to go over and she had rhubarb pie. She had fresh tomatoes. I still love tomatoes. They're like one of my favorite things, garden tomatoes. I saw, the cows and the pigs and got to play in the field and play in tractors and go sledding down the hill as long as we didn't hit the fence. I caught tadpoles and milk gallon jugs. So I just really wanted to bring back some of that family life with my boys and do stuff with them. And that was the main reason. So as you get into homeschooling, I talked about the why. That is what will help you persevere. Just my love for my kids. That's it. That's all I needed. So as we talk about the why, we can talk about the how now. So I'm going to run pretty soon, but I do want to start this and get it going, because if I don't, I'm not going to get this going. So when I started off homeschooling, You can pick up Charlotte Mason's book. You can pick up Mary Pride had a book on homeschooling. Ruth Beechick, John Holt, John Gatto. You want to look at the philosophy. I'm trying to think of who the other people were that I started off with. It was Better Late Than Never. Okay, the Moores, Raymond Moore, Raymond and Dorothy Moore, Sally Clark. These are all books to look at to say, what is my philosophy with this? What do I think about this? So I started off traditionally homeschooling. I had like a little area in the trailer where my son could, paint. I had like a chalkboard. I had a cute like little kind of like a tray where you could put paperwork and your pens and pencils. I think I had a desk at one point. I had like the handwriting, everything. So I started off traditional and then I went to eclectic, which is a mix of all kinds of different things you can do. And then it was pretty controversial amongst a lot of homeschoolers at the time, but I went into unschooling with my last two. And the reason why I did is because I saw more of their curiosity and more of their desire to learn. So, one example of this is we would go hiking, and my son would initiate and read just a lot of hiking books on his own. I mean, that's what he would do. And then he would, you know, we did, what was it called? It was like minimalist backpacking, hiking, where, he would learn from the books a lot of math, how many ounces he needed for this and how much he needed for that. So there is no way I would have been able to keep up with that kind of learning. And although it's called unschooling, I actually feel like if you have the right material, and there's books on this too, if you look up a bunch of books on unschooling, you can actually get more done and it sticks more. It's more effective because they're doing it. So you want to do that. You want to use your kids' curiosity. The flexibility with homeschooling is awesome. You only really have to homeschool about 3.5 hours a day. That's it. If you can have some kind of plan every day for about 3.5 hours, you don't have all the time that the schools take, wasting time with the buses, with walking, getting home, everything that needs to be done. You don't have to work for the school. You don't have to go there and you don't have to do all the homework at night. You can make your own curriculum. But you want to check state law. You want to check what's required. I just put a video up about how New Hampshire, the homeschoolers' rights are being challenged. They want, standardized tests for all kids. It really shouldn't be applying to homeschoolers because unless you're taking like money from the state, you are free. You're a free agent. So you really shouldn't be required to test as everyone else unless you're taking that money. But even then, I'm somebody who's just like, no, you don't need standardized testing. Most of the time when I did the homeschooling, I gave the portfolio I had put together each year and I took notes almost every day, just taking notes of what we were doing, pulled it together each month and then each quarter and then each year to make a portfolio. And I had a professor of education who I first started doing the portfolios with. And she would look at the work and she knew, she was a professor and she was also a school teacher. So she knew, she could see some things and she would always say, what a good job you're doing. What a good job. So you don't really need the tests. You don't. If you are homeschooling right and you know your kid very well, you are going to know by putting balloons out every now and then, okay, here's a test and here's a question and here's this. And by homeschooling, you usually already know what your kids know, right? The problem with the standardized testing is a lot of it's political, a lot of it's what the schools want you to learn, what the state wants you to learn, rather than the whole point of homeschooling is to have the freedom to teach your kids as you want. I did know a lady who had 7 kids, and she had said, I'd rather them know God than know what's out there. You can always learn stuff later, right? You can always learn more later, and it's always changing. I mean, even science is always changing. So don't feel like I agree with her with you don't, there's some basics, yeah, but you want to get in as much as you can with your kids. I wanted to make sure they all knew how to read. I wanted to make sure they all knew how to swim, basic math. There's some basics you want, but a lot of times they can learn that later. And Raymond Moore was a big champion on letting them learn to read later. And I read his book and I'm like, oh my goodness, really? He's like, yeah, they don't need to be in front of the TV all the time. They're going to need glasses if they're in front of a TV or a computer all the time. And he would really advocate for having them go outside and play and enjoy nature and then teach them to read. So that's kind of opposite of what was coming out when I started homeschooling, which was early learning, like early reading. So I did have someone say to me once, I was at a homeschool co-op, and they were like, what would be the benefit of having your kids read later? And I'm like, because they can enjoy their childhood more. They don't have the burden of trying to read. So I all my kids learned how to read. I did have one at like 4 who read really early. He just picked it up really quick. 4 to 6, they knew their letters and everything, but they were reading about that age, 4 to 6. There was no rush to hurry up and get things in that they're going to forget anyways the next day. So, teach your kids to listen to you, to obey you, to have good character, to, share their toys, the little things that matter like that, to know their colors, to know, to help do chores, instill hard work in them. Do those things first. Build on those kind of things. And I'll be talking about that more too. But cooking, cleaning, they do need to know that. Even as boys, they need to know how to cook. All my boys knew how to cook, and they were the ones in Boy Scouts who knew how to do the cooking when a lot of other guys did not know how. And so those skills help them, even in Boy Scouts later on. Um, Fishing, get them outside, biking, especially boys. Boys, when they are sitting for a long time, it's really difficult to do when they're young. I had one doctor say, oh, just put him on Ritalin. And I'm like, I am not putting my son on Ritalin because he's hyper. And his actual energy is what he used to hike around the country and in other countries later on in life. So don't feel like, I have boys and they have to sit at a desk all day, because usually boys have a lot of energy. And be very vigilant. I'm going to say that before I end this. Be very vigilant at the doctor's office. I just shared this on Peterson's video. I used to have to speak my mind at the doctors quite a bit. They would be like, oh, let's do this for shots. And I would research stuff with the National Vaccine Center and be like, no, they caught chicken pox already. There were like 3 of them that caught the chicken pox. They have natural immunity, right? So they don't need the chicken pox vaccine. Or it's, what they want to do when my kids were growing up is have babies take all these shots all at once. No, we're not doing the shots all at once. And when I would put my foot down, a couple times I got red flagged, and on the papers would be mother refused vaccines, right? So I would look like this, really ignorant mother. And then I had a doctor who came in, and he was from Poland. And he's like, I've had every single disease on the list here. I've had everything. And he says, and because have had everything, I am naturally immune to every single disease that I've had. So I just thought that was really interesting. He was very supportive. I would have the doctors be like, okay, why don't you leave the room and we'll talk to so-and-so about sex and about this and about that. And I would be like, excuse me, I am the mother and I'm going to sit right here in the room. And if you have any questions, you can ask me. So I was very protective, even at the doctor's offices, just with a lot of like garbage they were handing out later on in life. And you want to make sure you're very involved, especially nowadays where the doctors and the schools and everyone are trying to turn, your kids into whatever they want. You want to be able to pull in, keep it pulled in, be discreet with your kids, because we're living in a day and age where it's just gotten so much harder, I think, for parents to parent. So that's what I got for now, guys, and I will be talking more on how to homeschool, what to use for curriculum, different methods, how to do stuff. You don't have to do it all on your own. I use the city often. I would use them for swim lessons. Like I said, camp, basketball, Boy Scout camp, Civil Air Patrol. Just use all the resources around you, and you don't have to do it all alone as a mom. Okay, thanks for joining me, guys.